Hey everybody, this is Carl and this is week 3, problem number 2, and I'll go ahead and just get started. As the new manager of a small convenience store, you want to understand the shopping patterns of your customers. You randomly sample 20 purchasers from yesterday's records, and the amounts of those purchases are shown below right here. Complete parts A through D. So one of the things is we're going to show you, along with kind of just explaining the questions over here in terms of the distributions, to actually create a distribution, kind of give you a sense. In Excel it can be a little tricky sometimes, especially what we call an array function. So here I have my bins. If you don't know what these are already, just kind of a sequence of numbers, categories, or buckets, if you will. 10 through 80, just kind of based on here. A rule of thumb, usually you would have 3 or 4 bins, but it really is an arbitrary selection, and I just wanted to do this just for visually to show you kind of where we're going. So in creating addition itself, first you got to create the frequency output. So we use the frequency function in Excel. Your data array, that's going to be this right here. You just highlight all, and then your bins array. So what this is right here. And we just go around, and we can just go ahead and do this and do your first value. And you have it 3. Now the catch, if you listen carefully, is to highlight all of these numbers. These to the right of your bin values. These are what you want to be populated correctly with a frequency distribution. And what you can do next after that is to go up here and to actually highlight this again. And the key point here after this is to hit Control Shift Enter in the same way that you would hit Control Alt Delete, kind of restarting a computer. So if you hit Control Shift and Enter, you'll notice that the values are populated. And what this means is each value up to that value, if you know what I mean. Like this is 5 values at 40. So 40, 1, 2, and 3, 4. Right there. So it gives you just a good sense up to 40 how many values, between 30 and 40. That's really what it's asking. So, and how many between 10 and 20? Well, there's actually none. So it gives you kind of a good ballpark, just understanding how these outputs work. And again, like this, what does 80 mean? There's 2. That means that there's 2 values between 70 and 80. And as you can see, there's 77 right here and 75. So now we have our frequency output. And now what we can do now is, and one of the easier parts, is to actually just create a visual. So we'll just do classic bar chart right here, or a column chart, I should say. And then after we get this going, oops, there you go. All right, just 2D, won't get fancy. And now that we have our actual graph output right here, we need to actually right click and select our data. So if you can get that, to select this data, select our data. There we go. And data range, we're going to go pick that out. It's always good with Excel. You really have to practice to make perfect, almost like learning an instrument. Now, what we want to do is, now the output it's getting there, but not yet. I'm going to flip it to get the true histogram. And really what we're looking at, it looks like series, and this is what happens sometimes in Excel. It actually labels both columns as a separate series. But what we really want to do, I think, is get rid of series 1, and that should make our histogram more accurate. Yep, there it is. Okay. So this is our histogram and our actual output, kind of similar to what you see in MyStatLab. So we'll go ahead and answer the questions right now. Is this distribution unimodal or bimodal? And what does that mean? Unimodal means that there is one highest point, one peak. Uni meaning 1. Multi means there's twin peaks, 2 peaks, more peaks. It could be as many as you want. But the key is that the highest points in the chart, that there's either one or there's several high points in this chart. And as you can see visually, that there is only one high point in this chart. So this is unimodal. This is a unimodal chart. And what are the modes? Well, the modes, if you kind of tell the root word unimodal, multimodal, modal, the mode. So what is the mode? It's somewhere between $30 and $40, which means it's this value. Remember that this value represents those that are between 30 and 40. Oops. So keeping that in mind when you're doing a frequency output. This is not just $40, rather it's a range. Each of these bins represents a range. Sometimes, depending on your frequency, if you have values that aren't as complex as dollar values, decimal points, and those kinds of things, it will be that exact value. But in this case, these bins represent a range. Is this symmetrical? Now, symmetrical means kind of equal distribution across both sides of the plane. You think of it symmetrical being like if you look at yourself or look at something in the mirror, that there is something, an exact shape, exact image replicated somewhere else. It's a mirror image in the sense. That's what kind of symmetry means in this case. And it really is, for the most part, symmetrical. However, there is a skew, as you can tell. It kind of skews this way. So it is symmetrical, but there is a skewing occurring. And are there any outliers? Is there any outliers in this data? Now, outliers in this case are points that look like they don't belong in this group. And as you can tell, the range is pretty much 0 to 80. There's not really any outliers in this output per se. There really isn't. For instance, what would be an outlier? An outlier in this case, just depending on this distribution of our random sample, an outlier could be, say, that you're having a $110 transaction. A $110 transaction would be an outlier in this case because of just the distributions of these. You could say and argue small values like $2.56. However, there are values like $5 here. So that denotes that there is some kind of, albeit small, but an occurrence that happens more than once. Outlier could be a $150 transaction at this convenience store. Somebody had wanted, a mass-produced item of some kind. Those kinds of things are usually outliers. So, and I think that does it for this, but feel free to ask us any questions along the way. Thanks so much.